Right, David?
Right.
His bio is on the back of your I was going to say your menu. On the back of your menu is his bio. But I think I'm going to let David talk to you about himself. You can read this, and I think he's just raring to go. Look at him. He's ready to go. Ready to go. Come on. Go.
Thank you, Gwen. I actually talk pretty loud, so I don't know if I'll necessarily be using the microphone, but talking about yourself, I'm actually going to tell you a little bit about my story in a second, but I'd like to start out with, by a show of hands, how many people here have suffered a significant personal loss in your life? Great, thank you. I am very fortunate to speak to groups as small as 10 or 20 up to, I did a church last week that had 3 services, about 3,000 people. So I feel very, very blessed to have this passion that I've pursued and continue to carry it on, as I had talked about being a speaker years and years ago. But I want to talk to you about my personal significant loss. It was September 29th, 1998. It was a Tuesday. I woke up about 6 o'clock and I looked to my right in bed, and Dana wasn't there, my wife. Oh, that's strange. I wonder where she is. And just then, Connor, my 4-year-old, comes walking in. Same question. Where is she? I don't know. Let's find her. So we walk down the hallway. Kyle, my 14-year-old, comes up. We don't know where Mom is. So we look in a couple of rooms. We walk down the hallway. We look downstairs. And down in front of the washer and dryer, she's crumbled up, kind of in a fetal position. It doesn't look good. So we go rushing down there. I turn her over. There's stuff coming out of her mouth and stuff. Connor starts crying. I said to Kyle, go call the police, go call the fire, call the medics, whatever. And within a matter of a few minutes, there must have been 20 or 25 people in our house. And they had those wires and paddles and all that tubes going into her and so forth. Most surrealistic thing I'd ever been through before. The only thing I'd ever seen like something like that was on TV. But what I noticed, for a lot of you, I'll learn how to talk, a lot of you that can experience something like this or have gone through some sort of a trauma, one of the things I found out is that time loses all measure. Just seems to, it doesn't even make sense. And I didn't even know how much time had gone by, and this little sort of short fire person came over to me and she said, Mr. Brook, we've been working on your wife for 90 minutes and we still don't have a heartbeat. Would you like us to continue? I remember thinking and just pausing for a second. Never before in my life had I had to make a life and death decision for somebody else. And I just sort of stared for a while, and I went, no, you can stop. And she was dead. She's 38 years old. And what had made it so compelling for me, I asked again about those significant losses in your life. That wasn't the first one for me. My father had committed suicide. Never understood that. He's a very successful attorney. My mother suffered from bipolar, manic depressive, that whole thing. She eventually got cancer and she died. I was relatively young for all of these. 2 of my best friends and I had graduated from high school, killed in a car accident. It just went on and on and on. And I started thinking at some point, I'm going to need to figure out something how to cope with this. And a couple days after Dana died, I walked up on this little deck we had and kind of looked out at the sky. And I remember, this was 15 years ago, I remember it like 10 seconds ago, and I just sort of pinched my skin. I don't think I can do this. I'm just skin and cartilage and bone and a few things. I just don't know if I can do it. I've suffered too much. And then it hit me at that very moment. Now I see why people kill themselves. We live by Green Lake. The Aurora Bridge was about a mile away. You just walk over there a mile, you just step over the bridge, done. No more pain. But I thought about it for another 4 or 5 minutes, and I thought to myself, you know what, I'm not going to do that. And for those of you that have been, again, down that road, once you take a decision off the table, it's no longer a consideration. I have a 4-year-old and a 14-year-old. I can't check out on them. Their mom's already dead. I'm going to have to stick around. So that was done. But I remember thinking, I'm going to have to figure out something that's going to give me a vehicle to help me cope. People talk about faith a lot. There's all sorts of things that I ask people all the time. I was saying to Gwen, I believe it was, or maybe it was Candy, I have some journals and books, and people always come up to me afterwards and they talk to me, they tell me these incredible stories. Just pour their heart out. It's the neatest thing. I can relate because of this that happened to you or that. And I always say, what's the biggest thing that got you through that? so telling to tell how people cope, because this life can be very, very challenging. What had happened to Dana, she died of a prescription pill overdose. She'd gotten hooked on Vicodin, Oxycontin, all this nonsense that's out there. She'd gotten arrested. I'd never seen somebody like this in my life with handcuffs. I thought it was a joke. She was in detox 3 different times. And actually, ironically enough, all in Everett, here up at Providence. And it was right there at Providence where Dr. Dickinson pulled me aside one day when I came in, and he said, are you David Brooke? Are you Dana's husband? Yep. I need to talk to you. Come on in. Sit down. And he was almost kind of mean about it, but I could see why. He goes, I need to let you know what you're up against. He says, I've been doing this for 35 years. And they had kind of a grouping of the people, and he's a fireman, she's an attorney. They try to make you feel better. I said, I feel bad, but I'm really most concerned about the blonde gal right there. That's Dana. He goes, I know. That's why I'm talking to you. But I'm going to tell you what the odds are. 1 in 20. 1 in 20. He says, one person will make it back to a normal life. And of the 19 that don't, half of them will be dead in the next year. And she died about 6 months later. And later, as I've gotten this opportunity to speak, and I do businesses and corporations, and I get to go to prisons and schools and all sorts of neat places, I always ask this question. I love to look at the faces. It's one of the big reasons why I don't like to do PowerPoint. You know, the PowerPoint people, and they're looking at the screen, and they're looking here, and you can't look at the people when you're doing a PowerPoint. And I see these faces looking at me that I know have gone down some similar roads. But I always ask people. So if you ask 20 people to do something, how many people do it? For me, a lot of times it's just one person. I think Dr. Dickinson was kind of right. Kind of a dramatic example. But I thought about it, and I thought, do you want to be the one, or do you want to be one of the 19? 20 people will tell you, I'll get the job done, I'll do whatever it is, but how many actually do? One of the things I talk about is a gratitude journal. I write in it every single day. And I'll talk about that in a minute. It's really the centerpiece of what I talk about, is having a vehicle, a tool, and a toolkit to help you. But I did realize this, and again, looking at these faces, I just love looking at faces, whether it's a small group or large, as I said. It depends on how you look at something. Now, we've all heard the glass half full and the glass half, all that kind of stuff. But I want to offer something different this morning, so I'd like you to all stand up, if you would, please, for a second. I think most of the breakfast is done here. And I just want you to just extend your right arm. I'll talk plenty loud. And just start turning it in a clockwise manner. Okay, now, we're in a digital world. There's a clock right there. I always check to make sure there's a clock around. To make sure, because the young generation, which way is clockwise? I just see numbers. So just keep doing it clockwise. Keep that nice stretch. That always feels good. Okay, now just start bringing it down real slowly. Just keep bringing it down maybe to the top of your head, your eyes. Keep it going clockwise. Your chin, your chest, and now your stomach. What direction is it going now? Bueller? Anybody? Bueller? What direction is it going now? Thank you. What's your name? Who said counterclockwise? What's your name? Max. What is it? Max. Max, you got a book when we're done. Just go ahead and sit down. I was in the church the other day and I did that exercise. In the middle of service was about 2,000 people. What direction is it going now? I go, it's a church. It's okay. You can say counterclockwise. There's nothing sacrilegious about that. I kept thinking that's why I was called Bueller. Nobody's seen that movie for years. But what happens is it's how you look at it. I graduated from the University of Washington. I got friends of mine that are PhDs and masters and all this fancy stuff, and they come up, hey, I saw your talk. What's the story of that circle thing? Did people actually change? Oh, no, you knucklehead. Did you pay attention at school? If you look at it from above, it's clockwise. From below, it's counterclockwise. It's just how you look at something. It's just my way of saying it. So it really, really comes back to, that's a choice that you have. I'm fortunate enough, I do workshops and all sorts of different things. We're going to do a couple little small exercises. You'll see some red paper on the table that I passed out earlier. But it depends on how you look at it. So I start telling people the first thing you got to do is you got to get something that's going to help you. Gratitude. How about embracing gratitude? How about that as an opportunity? We have all these other choices, and there's all these incredibly negative, destructive, deadly coping mechanisms out there that people use to cope with life. But I realize you got to start with the gratitude. The next thing is it takes as long as it takes. Every one of you, I keep talking about looking at the faces. We all have a different path. Somebody once said to me, don't ever compare yourself to somebody else. Well, I will be 64 in about a month. And I know you're going, dang, he doesn't look a day over 63. It must be the short hair, which used to be black, now it's gray, which is so sad. But it's the path that we have. Colonel Sanders didn't start KFC till 63. All these examples, Walt Disney went to 300 banks before he got financing for Disneyland. I mean, there's just a million examples. It takes as long as it takes, and you can't ever give up. You just can't give up. I don't care what anybody says. Your friends, whoever you're closest to, whatever, you just can't give up. So here's Connor. Connor was 4, as I mentioned. So I have to hold him back in first grade. He has such a tough time with Dana's death. Kyle had a very hard time. Connor was, as I mentioned, only 4. So they were in preschool, and they said, your son's all messed up. Exact words, messed up. I said, mother just died 6 months ago. What do you expect? Well, whatever. That's kind of how this gal was. Well, we need to do an assessment. So they do all these tests and everything, and they bounce balls, and poor Connor is doing the best he can. And finally, when we're done, they have him go sit out in the lobby, and I sit and talk to the gal at the desk, and she says, we've got all sorts of problems here. You're going to have to do occupational therapy, and it's going to be this, and they have a list this long. And at the end, as I mentioned, we live by Green Lake. I said, well, that may be true, but I'm going to tell you something. I was a decent athlete. He's going to be the quarterback at Roosevelt High School. She goes, I don't think so. Remember, just like yesterday. I'm sure that's true with any of you folks that have those pivotal discussions with people. So I walked out in the car, sat in the car next to Connor, and I did the only thing I could do. I just burst out into tears. I couldn't stop crying. Dad, what are you crying about? I couldn't tell him. Oh, you're not going to make it in life, Connor. That's what she's telling me. But he kept trying. I had to hold him back in first grade. He wanted to play sports. He couldn't do anything with sports. He tried baseball. Couldn't catch, couldn't run, couldn't throw, and couldn't hit. Other than that, not too bad. But he wants to, so the first, how many people have kids? Oh, wow, look at that, majority, fantastic. Well, whether you have kids or you have nieces or nephews or whatever, you know T-ball? Okay, T-ball. The ball does not move when it sits on the tee. It just sits there. Now, how do you miss this ball? And so poor Connor, he's hitting above it and everything, and I'm going, no, Connor, it's down. Get the ball, and you're just the tee. So he keeps dropping. He finally goes about midway from the ball to the tee, hits the tee, the ball dribbles forward, he goes, got to hit. No, Connor, but thank you for trying. And he's like starting to run to first base. That's not a hit. But he kept trying, but he couldn't get it. But he kept going back and back and back. And I was in the stands. Practice, 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 even without a wife and any support, anything. We ended up losing our house because of Dana's addiction. I had to move in with a friend. There's a bunch of stuff I won't even bore you with. It's just tough. You got to figure out a way back. But Connor wouldn't stop. So we went through all the levels, and we get to May 31st, 2005. He's about 9, 10 years old. It's the bottom of the 7th. He hasn't even played. They're down 7-6. There's 2 guys out. Bottom of the 7th, as I mentioned. I look over. Oh, man, look who's coming. I just remember it and thinking, oh. So once again, sort of intuition takes over. So I do the only thing that seems logical. How about a walk? Hit by a pitch. We've had a tough life here. Could we just kind of... Ball 1, ball 2, strike 1, strike 2, full count. Next ball comes in. These pitchers pitch fast. Connor rips it down the third base line, goes just inside the bag. The guy from third comes into the plate. The guy from second comes around third. Here comes the ball. Here comes the guy. Here comes the catcher. They all hit at the plate. The guy catches it. They crash on the plate, and the ball comes flying out. They win the game 8-7. So, thank you for clapping. Connor is standing out on second base. Now, kids don't acknowledge their parents. Not Connor. Dad, got a hit. You're supposed to pretend your parents are not there. You don't acknowledge them. You're just glad they're there. Not Connor. Dad. And the entire dugout goes out to second base, puts them on their shoulders, carries them off the field. Yeah, oh, thank you. Thank you. We got home. I couldn't talk. I'm a very emotional person. I know most guys cry. I cry easily. It didn't bother me. But I couldn't talk for an hour, hour and a half. I had this huge lump in my throat. And we get home and I sit down on the bed. And again, you remember these things like just moments ago. And I said, Connor, I'm going to tell you probably one of the most important things I ever told you. It was never about baseball. It was about the fact you never gave up. And I want you to remember that lesson forever. Connor and Kyle are 29 and 19 now. Kyle, my 29-year-old, runs a key bank. Connor graduated from Bothell High School last year. He was Student of the Year at Skyview Junior High, and he had about a 3.5 average from Bothell. And maybe more importantly to him, he was the leadoff hitter on his baseball team. So, you guys are, I'm going to have to get books for everybody here. Everybody's so nice. But it's such an important concept, and that's one of the things, as I mentioned, when I get to talk to people afterwards about hearing their stories. But this embrace gratitude, it takes as long as it takes, don't give up. And then here's the next thing. You got to get rid of the junk in your brain. We all have junk. And one of the things I noticed is that when you go out to your cars today, it was tough to find parking today. I'm like halfway to Arlington, but I realized a lot of cars out here. But just take a look at, you can use the bus as the same thing, I guess, but really your car. The windshield is about this deep, about 2 feet deep or high, whatever, and it's about 4 feet wide. Just notice how big that is. And then look how big your rearview mirror is. It's about like that. I should figure out the percentage, but I'm going to guess it's like 100 to 1 or something like that. Well, guess what? What should you be focusing on the most? Where are you going? Now, you can pay attention to this a little bit. I've had a few times there's blue lights flashing. You got to pull over. But what we do is we go through junk in our lives, and then we drive through it, and then we take the junk and we put it back in front of us again, and we drive over again. Just ask anybody who talks about one of their exes. Oh, my Lord. I know that was a tough situation. You've moved on. Don't keep bringing that garbage and putting it in front of you. But it makes such a big difference. And I think one of the things that's so important is that, again, it has to do with processing this stuff and getting it through you and getting it done and being done with it. And one thing I'd like to just point out, too, is I'd like everybody instantaneously to point to yourself. Everybody point to yourself. Okay, that's about 99%. Pretty good. Thank you. Okay, so everybody points right here. Well, my feeling on that is you're pointing to your heart. Because I think your heart is what drives you. Now, this is the CPU unit up here, the brain, but I think it starts as a thought and it goes to your heart. And I'm going to talk about in a second on a gratitude journal why writing is so important. But if it was all in your head, I think you might tip over. You know, you wouldn't be balanced right. You might just fall over. But it really starts with here. But this is what controls you. That's why we talk about it's the heart of the matter and all those different things. So think about that. But as you're thinking about that, think about the junk that's out there. So here's what I want you to do. Red paper on the desk or on the table. Everybody grab a piece of red paper. Hopefully I've got enough. They're the little, what is that, 6 by 8 or whatever it is. And by the way, when I do these exercises, I always get a kick out of, so Sandy and Tracy, I recall. So Tracy, put your hand up for a second. And I'll put it like straight in front of you, like this. Okay. Now, notice this. I told Tracy to put her hand up. Did I say anything about pushing back? and I just go, I'm not writing in your red paper. I'm pushing back. And but everybody does it. There's never been a person yet that just lets me push them over. So here's what I want you to think about. There's all this junk that you have, and it's been piling up for a lot of years and so forth. You got to get rid of it. You got to clear it out. It's like I go by these garages that are just, the garage opens up and the boxes are from floor to ceiling. They don't even put a car in there. There's so much stuff. It's just interesting to me. So you got to get rid of this junk. So here's what I want you. Does everybody have a pen? Hopefully everybody's got a pen. So red paper. Why red paper? Well, let me start with this. When you write on red paper, it's rather difficult for your neighbor to see what you've written. Kind of hard to make it out. And what you're about to write, you don't want anybody to see. This is between the famous you, yourself, and I, just all three of you. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you 2 minutes on the clock. And what you're going to write down on that red paper is, as best you can, as fast as you can, because you're going to get 2 minutes, in the best priority order, every mess up, screw up, regret, things you're pissed off about, if I can use that word, that you're mad at yourself, that you need to get rid of, and anything you can think of, like, what was I thinking? Oh my Lord, I don't know what I was doing. 2 minutes, start now. And I don't know if many of you would want to be talking. I wouldn't want to be. I wouldn't want to be sharing that. But go ahead. Just get water.
Is it water? I got
Okay,
the
aren't you
water.
nice?
I got the water.
No, thank you. Wait, are you ladies participating? Are you participating in the exercise?
No, I'm not this stuff that every year for school.
Oh my God, can we meet? Can we meet?
They've all been learning experiences.
That's true. Thank you. About a minute to go. About 15 seconds. Okay, and stop. So hopefully your neighbor hasn't glanced over your shoulder. When I first did this exercise, I'm always the one that raises his hand, so I go, can I have about 20 minutes? I need a little more time. I feel I've made just a few screw-ups. But the whole key here is, so a lot of things that I'll do, we're going to do one more little thing here in a little bit around gratitude. But I'll say to people, who wants to say what, blah, blah, blah. They'll report out something. So I accidentally said that one day with this, because nobody wants to share this. And I went, does anybody want it? And I forgot which exercise on. And a gal right over here goes, I'll do it. She starts reading off all these things. And I went, okay, stop. It's okay. You're embarrassing yourself, and I feel bad, and now you're going to hate the speaker. But the other reason why I deal with red, not only can the neighbor not see it, but if we go to a stoplight and we see green, what does that mean? Go. And so great. And if we see red, stop. Thank you. We got to stop with this stuff. So what we're going to do now is, now you have 30 seconds. And this is always a little challenging me to determine the winner. I'll do the best I can later. You have 30 seconds, as soon as I say start, to tear that into as many pieces as possible. Whoever gets the most pieces wins the book. Go.
Let somebody else do
And stop. Okay, so if you feel your pile is the best, bring it over to me later. It's always tough in a group of this size. I try to, sometimes the company will buy books for every table or whatever. You never know what it is. But I would caution you, one thing I've seen a number of times is watch your pile. I've seen people try to piece it together by their neighbor and start putting the pieces together. It makes me wonder who your friends are when they're doing that. Gee, I wonder what she messed up on. But the idea is, again, you got to get rid of that stuff, okay? And that's the key thing. So Once you've embraced gratitude, once you've realized it takes as long as it takes and your journey is different than the person that's next to you, and you've gotten rid of this junk, crap, whatever we want to call it, what happened for me is a good buddy of mine said to me, you need to get a gratitude journal. Now, how many have ever heard of a gratitude journal? Wow, that's a lot more than usual. How many have ever heard of a journal? Almost everybody. Have you ever seen a journal? Just even seen it anywhere? That's everybody. Thank you. Well, he said to me, you should get a gratitude journal. So I went on Amazon and I got a gratitude journal. This is actually mine, but this is before I got that. I ordered it and I did what just embarrasses the heck out of me. I just put it on the shelf for about 3 months. Didn't even use it. Well, that's just genius. Why do you buy a book and not read it? But I noticed when I started writing in it, all these amazing things started to happen. Because what embracing gratitude does and what framing it and writing it does is reframe, refocus everything in your life that you're grateful for versus we focus so much on what we don't have or not grateful for. Why do they have this boat, this house, this marriage, whatever it might be? It's crazy. You look at all their advertising and everything. It's all about, if you had this, you'll be happy. Somebody, I forget who it was, it said, was it Tracy or Sandy? I forget. Somebody said anything has to do with happiness in the title. People are so often seeking happiness and they think it's going to be with stuff. If they buy this car, get this, take this trip, do this thing, whatever, it could help. But it's where it's the core that it comes from. And it has to do with who you see in the mirror, how this gratitude thing works. So I started writing in it and I noticed these amazing things, as I said. And then I decided to develop my own. So I did the Brooker's Daily Gratitude Journal. And started writing it all the time, and I started seeing again all these really, really cool things happen. And I just mentioned a minute ago, pointing to yourself. Now, nobody did it here, but I was in a group last week and somebody went like this, which, I mean, what does that mean? Why would you point? That looks like, and another person was like this, and they were cross-eyed, they were right in the front, and I don't even know what to say, because most everybody just points at their heart. But it's so important that you have to write this. If you think about it, it's like a dream. If you talk about it, it inspires you. But if you write about it, it empowers you. It makes such a huge difference. So I always like, again, to look at the audience and get the average age kind of, and when I do schools and stuff. Question in the back, do you have an app? I'm like, actually, I have an app. You know, it's like, and it's, you press on it and you go, I'm so grateful I got to know Becky Mulholland. I'm so grateful that Gwen invited me and Candy, and you know, and then it just types it. But it's not the same. It's not this visceral thing. Why did we take notes in college and things? So what I did is I developed this, and it has a little bit of a structure to it. Now, you can't expect you to see this from here, but hopefully everybody has another piece of paper, or you can write on something. You need another little piece of paper for this exercise. Up here at the top, it says day and date, and it says daily number. Well, what my concept of the daily number is, the best day of your life is maybe a 10, and the worst day is maybe a 1. So wherever you are in that scale. Doesn't have to be the absolute best, but where you are at that time. And then next, we'll get back to that in a second, a couple of lines on current events and special occasions. That's just so you don't have to have a journal. I'm so grateful for everything you're grateful for, hopefully in priority order, but it doesn't matter. And then the highlight of your day. What's the best thing that happened to you? Maybe today it's only 10, so maybe it was yesterday. And then there's always somebody. How about the low light of your day? Are you listening to the presentation? This is about good stuff. This isn't about bad stuff. And then on the right-hand side, something I feel very passionate about is called gratitude tomorrow, or your gratitude intentions. Your brain, the prefrontal cortex, where your subconscious is housed, cannot distinguish the difference between what you think is going to happen and what actually happens. So you start writing here. I always write, I'm so grateful for the great group I got to talk to up at Everett this morning. Always, right before I went and did that church, it was a big church. I'm just grateful for being able to connect with so many people. It happens, it programs it. So very, very important. So what I want you to do is, before we have you write a couple of things here in a second, I want you to think about that daily number. Again, 10, one of the best days of your life, 1, not so good. So I'm going to ask you in a second, everybody get your number, no halves, just get your number. If you're a 1 to a 5, don't raise your hand. If you're having a tough day, I don't want to embarrass anybody. But get that number planted in. We're just going to do a quick poll of the audience here. So if you got the number, how many people here are 6? Wow. A couple? Few? Okay, how many 7s? Okay, that's usually a pretty good chunk. How about 8s? Good chunk of 8s. 9s? Okay, and 10s? 2. Okay, cool. All right, here's what I'd like you to do. On your piece of paper, I want you to stop and just take that pen and very privately think to yourself, what is the number one thing you're most grateful for? And write it down. It could be a sentence, it could be a person, it could be one word, it could be whatever. If you could only pick one thing, what would it be? Write it down.
Right now?
Yep, right this very second.
The food, like the food?
That's fine. She's getting promoted. Anybody that compliments the food's going up in the chain. Okay, as soon as you got that down, second most important thing you have in your life that you're grateful for. And I don't ever like to give you ideas because everybody's different. I know what mine are. So you got the number one thing you're grateful for and then the second most thing you're grateful for. Okay, and then last thing, again, word, sentence, or whatever. What was the highlight of your day yesterday? What was the best thing that happened to you? Wow. Could be some football fans here, huh? My special guest this morning will be Russell Wilson. Will be coming here to talk. Yeah. Forget the speaker. Get Russell up here.
Marshawn.
Beast mode. Okay. So here's what I want you to do. I'd like you just be quiet for a second. I want you just to look what you wrote. First and second, things you're most grateful for, and what was the highlight of your day. Sometimes I have people share. It's amazing. Grandchildren, kids, health, just all these different things. But what were those two grateful things, and then what was the highlight of your day yesterday? Okay, now that you got that planted in your brain, I want to try this daily number again. 1 to 5, don't answer. How many 6s? I don't think we had many before. This is no, right? Just after this little exercise. Now, how many 7s? Okay, a few. How many 8s? Okay, quite a few more. How many 9s? Quite a few more. And how many 10s? 3 or 4 or 5 more. Well, for those of you who look around, the 8s, 9s, and 10s always go up a notch. That's a 90-second, 2-minute example of what writing in the gratitude journal will do for you. Because you're writing it down. And I tell people, once this is over, the biggest thing I'm grateful for is my health. Because if I wasn't healthy, I wouldn't even be here. I couldn't be a Connor or a father to Connor or Kyle or anybody. And family. And even though I've lost my parents, I lost when I was young, and all these different people, it reframes and refocuses everything in your life. And on this one, I left mine in the car. I write in it every day. So I usually have it with me. And these last about 3 months. And so people will look, oh, wow, you write in it every day. I go, were you listening to the presentation? How often do you brush your teeth? Do you just, like, occasionally? It's like it has incredible power of momentum when you do this. I have timed this tons and tons of times. It takes 7.5 minutes is all it takes. You can write the individual lines or 2 lines. It doesn't matter. But the idea is to develop the momentum. It makes a huge, huge difference. Okay, I'm going to wrap up in about 10 minutes. I want to talk about a couple other things. I was asking Candy about, just tell me about the people in the room. I like to know what you do. Maybe it was Gwen. Types of work you do. And one of the things, I do a lot of work in corporate America now. I got to leave. Used to manage a Nordstrom store and used to manage Lowe's Home Improvement up in Mount Vernon. And I wanted to do this since I was 19. It took me 40 years to realize that dream. That's why I feel so strongly about you don't ever give up, just like Connor in baseball. But gratitude in corporate America, things have really changed. And when I get to do these workshops, 30 years ago, the top 3 things employees, I guess we're all employees in one form or another, wanted was appreciation and recognition, help with personal problems, and being in on the know. Those are the top 3. Now, appreciation and recognition is still a big part of this, but this dropped to like 4th. And the newest survey done by the same group from 83 to now 2013 is purpose. People want a purpose. Look at some of the work that, just again, when I got a flavor of what you folks do. Goodness gracious, talk about a purpose. Helping people, making a difference. Number 2 was goals. And number 3 was having a responsibility. People leave all these 6-figure jobs and all this fancy stuff to go out there and help people and work for free in many cases. You talk about understanding that. Well, the reason I bring it up so much is a boss, I've managed people all my life. And that store, that wasn't the one I managed, but the one in Mount Vernon, 200 employees. The biggest Nordstrom store I had was 500 at Northgate. They just want you to appreciate them. They want you to help them see their purpose. But most of all, they want you to be grateful that they're there for you. And it starts with you being grateful as a parent, as a boss, as a manager, as a leader, whatever it is. And it just goes down the the line, if you will. Thing I noticed the most is this managing employees and raising children. In my opinion, the number one skill in both those is the example you set. I see people all the time. I've never smoked. I see people all the time. You better not smoke. And they're puffing away. It just doesn't work that way. So embracing gratitude and setting that good example makes such a big difference. One of the things I notice, higher retention rates. I've gotten lower turnover, higher engagement, decreased absenteeism. There's all sorts of things that are a result of that. So it makes such a big difference. So just to kind of refresh, and we're going to do one last exercise here in the last 10 or so minutes, and then I'll wrap up. Embracing gratitude. Takes as long as it takes. Never give up. Make room for gratitude. Clear out the stuff in your brain. Get a gratitude journal. Now, here's another thing. One excuse is as good as the next, in my opinion. I've had people go, you know, I got your journal. It doesn't lay like really flat. Is it possible to have a spiral version? Well, I suppose. But it's like, I go running in the morning. What if my toe hurts? I guess I could use that as an excuse. But I tell people, I get to do radio interviews once in a while, and they always say, what's the one thing for the listeners you could take away? I go, just try a gratitude journal. It can be mine. I sell these for $15. I used to give them away, and then people didn't write in them. And now I notice if I charge $15, everybody writes in them. But it could be mine, but just get a spiral. I don't care. But write it down and try it. It makes such a big difference. Last module, I talk about sharing gratitude. If you wonder who your best friend is, stop and think about who you call when you get the best or worst news. Who's the first person you call? Well, probably that's your best friend. At least that's the person you're closest to. And what I think about is how this gratitude journal made a big difference in my life. I mentioned my mom was manic depressive. Bipolar, they call it now. When I was younger, as if I hadn't had enough other challenges, she would call me, and I was working and going to school, and she'd go like this. I have these sleeping pills right here. I'm going to take them all unless you come over. And she'd just shake them. I could hear them on the phone. And I thought, are you kidding me? Mr. Gallup, I need to leave. My mom doesn't feel good. And what do you say to somebody who's going to kill themselves? There's 5 of us. I'm the one that's number 2 born, and I'm kind of the leader of the family. So mom would call me. So I'd run over there and drive over there and leave my work, leave school and everything. And I think I got some of that from her. I think I got some of that depression stuff. And I just thought after medication had killed so many people, now medication has many, many good uses. I would never advocate against that. But I thought, I think I got some of that. So back to the 1 to 10, I woke up about a year ago, I was at 2. I was really depressed. And I've been through a lot, but gosh, I'm the gratitude guy. I'm out here telling people about these tools that are available, healthy ones. So I did what seemed logical. I grabbed my gratitude journal, went to Starbucks and wrote in it. That bumped me up to about a 5. Still wasn't where I used to be. I'm usually a 7, 8, or 9, 9.5, 10. So I went up and did a talk up at Burlington Chambers where it was. So after it was done, it's maybe 60 or 70 people. People come up and talk to you afterwards, and this gal's crying. She goes, you just changed my life. So my name's Janice. Can I give you a hug? I said, absolutely. She gives me a hug. I said, but I got to tell you, I don't think I changed your life. I just gave you some tools that can help you. She says, well, that's fine. I said, what was it about? So I'm not going to tell you because it'll get me too upset. One of your stories or something. I get back in the car. She bought a couple of journals. There's a bunch of other people there. It's extremely rewarding. I tell people, gosh, before you leave this earth, try to find what you're passionate about. I don't care if it's mowing lawns. Try to find what it is. I used to manage those big stores, as I mentioned. It's okay, but nothing like what I'm doing now. I got back in the car and I realized I was a 9. I'd gone from a 2 to a 5 to a 6 to a 9. Didn't have a beer. Didn't do a drug. Didn't do any of this other stuff. Wrote my gratitude journal and maybe changed a life or at least changed her direction at all. So it made such a big difference. And I got this big smile on my face. And I'm thinking, I'm going to call Connor. Because Connor is my number 1 call. Kyle's my number 2 call. But I didn't. I just drove along with this big smirk on my face. And then I just took the rearview mirror and I just turned the rearview mirror and I looked at myself and I'm so freaking proud of you. God. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing, but let's see. Where are your hammers and nails? Which aisle at Lowe's? That's important work. But it made such a big difference, and I was proud of myself. I don't know how long I'm going to be on this planet. I'm 63, almost 64 next month. I'm going to work till 70, 80, 94, God willing. Because if you can change one life on one day and make a little difference, I can't even explain how that makes you feel. So last thing with the sharing gratitude. What I noticed is that, okay, we have enough time to do this. I didn't notice this today. Was anybody on their cell phones today while I was talking? Anybody? You should probably get a book, just for being honest. Does everybody have their cell phones with them? I want you to take them out. And here's what we're going to do. I hope there's good reception. I was in the church the other day and the reception wasn't really good. So what I want to do, if we talk about sharing gratitude, I want you, this is the 4 T's. I'm going to give you 90 seconds. I want you to text, tweet, telephone, or tell somebody in your life how grateful you are for them. And if they ask you what the heck's going on, I don't know, some speaker just told me to tell you this. So you got 90 seconds, whichever of those 4. Text, tweet, tell, or telephone, go. As many as you want, as many as you can do in 90 seconds. This is your way of sharing gratitude.
I just got a text from
That's hilarious. About a minute ago. You can do more than one. Just let them know. Fifteen seconds. Okay, and stop. And you can do more of those later. And if they say, why did he do it? Just, I don't know, some speaker said to do it, whatever. But people tell me all the time, especially husbands and wives. I don't know if I tell my wife or my husband how grateful I am for them. We seem to take it for granted, the people that are closest to us. So last thing on sharing gratitude. By the way, I wanted to say when Max, is it Max?
Yes.
Because Max answered the question. So this is this book. I did 365 days of gratitude. I have one story in this. I sent in 27 entries, thinking the mine were all good, and it wasn't. And they always say the email, the way you can tell you didn't get it, it says thank you, right in the subject line. Thank you for your entry. It's no good. And then I finally saw an email that said congratulations, and I got it. But what I wanted to tell you too, it's also very important to be humble. And I am so pleased and so excited and proud of myself because of the rearview mirror to do this work. But I never lose sight of what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to change some lives. There was a gal, I think it was Oak Harbor. So usually I'll do everybody's business cards, and I ask Gwen and Candy if everybody had business cards, and I try to do a drawing and stuff, but there's too many people today. And so this gal, she wins a book. It's Sandy Smith. They all clap, and she comes up, and I'm on the podium, and here you go, Sandy, congratulations. And she goes, thanks. And I say, hey, by the way, if you'd like later, I'll sign that for you. She looks back, that's okay. Trying to make a difference. Not John Grisham, I get it. Last thing, when you share it, you notice how much more fulfilling it is. I wanted to go skydiving a few years ago. I never did drugs, never smoked, drank, did dope, coke, all that junk. I watched it kill a lot of people. But I was kind of an adrenaline junkie. I went bungee jumping a couple years ago with Connor and Kyle. But I made this appointment for 8 to go skydiving. So they all said, yeah, let's do it. So I go 8, and then pretty soon it was 7. And then there were 6 guys. And then the Wednesday before the Saturday, I get a phone call. I have a sore throat. Let me guess, you can't make it on Saturday. So okay. So I walk into Issaquah skydiving. It's been a few years. Walk up, hi, Brooke, party 8. He goes, Where's your friends? I don't have any. And I went by myself. And I actually have a picture of it sometimes. I don't like to use PowerPoint, as I said, but shows me like going like this, jumping, all by my, nobody ever got to see that with me except me. I didn't get to land and go, wasn't that cool? And the parachute opened all again, just by myself. So just remember that when you get to share things, it makes it so much more fulfilling. And you can think about the time something like that happened to you and you didn't get to share, and it was cool, but it wasn't quite the same. So I offer up a gratitude, embracing. It takes as long as it takes. Never give up and share gratitude. Get a gratitude journal. I don't care which one you get. Get mine, get any of them. I don't care. It'll make a difference. But I will tell you, embracing gratitude can change your life. It can transform your life. And I fully believe it can save your life. It saved mine. And I offer up as it can save yours too. Thanks a lot. See you at the table.
All right.